my point. Like, it's not just Kevin Patullo saying, hey, fans are coming for my neck. Jeffrey Lurie has proven if you don't get the job done, you're done. Welcome back in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of Bird 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, Johnny Mack, John McMullen. The Philadelphia Eagles are 2-0 as they get ready now for Week 3 versus the LA Rams. It'll be a 1 o'clock game on Sunday in Philly. Rams coming to town, so it'll be good stuff there for the Birds to get into their third game of the year. John, I do want to talk about the offensive coordinator. I know we talked about him a little bit yesterday. We'll continue to talk about him as we continue to go through the season here. But I do find it interesting, John, when you look at kind of the history of this position, specifically just under Nick Sirianni. You got two out-of-house hires and Shane, which is a little different because it was a new regime at the time. Shane and Kellen, both coordinators who lead the Eagles to a Super Bowl. One of them obviously won a Super Bowl in Kellen Moore last year with this offense. And then you have the two in-house hires, Brian Johnson, who was here for a year and was fired, top 10 offense, but still fired nonetheless. And then you have Kevin Patullo now. So the expectations, John, the weight of expectations on that position is clearly very high. And it's, you can see just through the four that they've had here, what you basically have to achieve in order to be successful at that spot. It's a tough spot for Kevin Patullo. I'm not even talking about everybody says, hey, the route concepts aren't good. The play calls are ugly. He's got to get better at that stuff. He's got an uphill battle just from an expectation setup, Johnny Mack, here in Philly.
Yeah, well, everybody does. He's not alone. That, obviously it starts with Nick and that perception, but and that's not necessarily a bad thing to have high expectations. You should think highly of yourself, but when you win 18 of 19 games and you win the way they've won, yeah, the expectations increase. You have to win every week or it's a catastrophe. So, yeah. Think about that. It shouldn't be sustainable, and they have somehow sustained it for this lengthy period. This is the best period of Eagles football in history, period. End of sentence. You can go back to 49 and 50, I guess, if you want to go. So I'll say Super Bowl era. Let's say that. By far the best stretch in Eagles history in the Super Bowl era. That creates, let's be honest, some spoiled fans. Yeah. And the expectations are just astronomical, but everybody's under that. Think about Vic. Think about the expectations with Vic. He'll figure it out. You saw what happened to him at the end of his Miami stint, and I'm not talking about guys being upset because they had to work hard, but they had a really good defense, and then Jalen Phillips got hurt, and Andrew Van Ginkel got hurt, and I forget their third edge rusher got hurt, and he was playing guys off the street that had to get off the street for a playoff game.
Right.
And they didn't play well. So, everybody has those expectations, but to your point about the offense, I don't like the in-house, out-of-house thing because Shane was in-house. Shane was here. Shane is one of Nick's best friends. Shane was one of Nick's first hires. That's in-house. And he just moved off the play calling and gave it to Shane. So that to me is in-house. So the only one out-house is Kellen Moore, which, by the way, if you just want to look at, and I've said this how many times, I don't think he was that good last year. And if they don't go on the run, nobody's talking about Kellen Moore as a head coach in this league. He's still here, and I don't think he's a bad coach, but there was no evolution, what you were sold. There was no grandiose changes. People were still complaining about the route concepts when they weren't throwing for 100 net yards. People were still talking about the lack of motion when they scaled that back, even though it was more than they had been doing. So if you take away the run to the Super Bowl, He's not getting a head coaching job. He hadn't gotten interviews really, except for Dallas. And Jerry decided to go in a different direction. And I've said it pretty consistently. The only difference between Brian Johnson and Kellen Moore is Sean Desai and Vic Fangio. One had Sean Desai, and one had Vic Fangio. It's the only difference.
Yeah, but we talk about the pressure.
Offense.
We talk about the expectations, John. Haven't they proven to not just be from fans? I mean, you brought up the fans. I don't think it has anything to do with the fans. Obviously, the fans have high expectations, but Brian Johnson, I mean, got fucking fired, John, for a number 8th ranked offense.
Well, the fans, yeah, that's Jeffrey. I mean, if you don't reach Jeffrey,
that's my point. Like, it's not just Kevin Patullo saying, "Hey, fans are coming for my neck." Jeffrey Lurie has proven if you don't get the job done, you're done.
Well, yeah, that to me has the most interesting potential for issues, because in the case of Brian Johnson, like, that's not a guy that Nick Sirianni's going to fight for. He was sort of bound by Howie Roseman. As they were looking for a quarterbacks coach, before he got in the building, whereas, Kevin's one of Nick's best friends. So, he might fight for Kevin Patullo in a situation you're talking about, where Jeffrey Lurie's saying, we have to go do something else. He might fight, whereas he went along with it. And I always say the difference between Nick and Doug is Nick's a better political animal. Like, not that he wanted to fire Brian Johnson, because he didn't, but he knew he had to, because the owner wanted him out. The owner wanted, and didn't even want him out specifically, but he needs a scapegoat. One of the very few poor things about, I think, Jeffrey Lurie is too often he goes looking for a scapegoat when expectations aren't met. And he knew the political nature of it, and he had to do it. Doug got tired of that at the end and wanted to keep his guys, certain guys, specifically Press Taylor, specifically Matt Burke or Corey Unlin. He wanted to be defensive coordinator. Jeffrey wasn't happy with it, and he kind of stood up for himself, and that was that. With the case of in that type of situation, if things go wrong and the scapegoat has got to be Kevin Patullo, it's going to be interesting to see how Nick Sirianni handles that. I mean, ultimately, my guess is if it comes down to that, you save your own skin, and but I think it'll be a more difficult transition. But the hope is that it doesn't come to fruition. But yeah, I mean, history says they'll be looking for a scapegoat. If they lose in the first round of the playoffs, they're going to be a playoff team.
Yeah, no doubt.
If they lose their first playoff game, somebody's going. Somebody's going somewhere on this staff. It's not going to be the head coach. Somebody's going. It's not going to be Vic. It's not going to be Stout. There's certain guys that aren't going.
It's just a tough thing because, Brian Johnson, I mean, if you told him, hey, your first year as an offensive coordinator in the National Football League, you'll have the number 8th ranked offense, he would say, shit, what a great year one. That's a good, man, I'll take that. I'll sign up for that right now.
And you're paying for the defensive sins really more than anything else.
Exactly.
And some injuries, they got hurt down. I mean, AJ didn't play in that playoff game. I forget, a bunch of guys missed it. Reed missed it. Forget who else, but yeah, that was an ugly game. And Tampa has a press box. It's an older stadium where we're in the front row, and like right behind us is some of the Eagles execs and scouts and personnel people. And, but when it was getting out of hand, I just, heard right behind me, this is fucking embarrassing. And when it looks the way it looked, like I remember I say going down for that game, I remember talking to you guys. I'm like, people are already talking, will Nick lose his job? I'm like, oh, stop. And after the game, I was like,
Yeah,
that was that ugly.
I remember that.
Um,
So what does
and
improvement look like, John, from here for this offense? What does improve? What is your forget mine, forget the fans, what is your expectation of the offensive improvement that we should see through the rest of the season?
yeah, it's fun. Well, from my perspective, it's funny because I acknowledge it's got to get better, but I expect it not to get too much better because just of the way they play and the way they have played, which is consistent through those
Right.
regimes, Shane Steichen,
Conservative run first offense. That's
exactly
what it is, right. Yeah.
So, but you want to see more efficiency in the passing game. But I feel like we have this discussion all the time, and then the weirdest thing is the expectations are way higher to most of the people you're talking about. And yet they're the ones who get upset when you criticize the quarterback at all. Part of it is trust. Part of it is handling the blitz better. Part of it is, processing quicker. All the things you have to get better as you go on. And Jalen's gotten better at all of that, but he's got to continue to get better. Like he hasn't hit the mark.
Right.
Specifically when it comes to sight adjustments and specifically when it comes to getting the ball out on time. Those are the two things that I can point to that say, if those things ever click and they still have this group, look out.
What does it take for those to click? Is it all quarterback? Is it all, I mean, where do you put that on?
90% quarterback. I mean, look, if you don't have pass protection, but that's, again, if you want, and I'm not talking about perfection. And if somebody wants a blitz 60% of the time, you're going to have some leaks, but you're not going to see that very often. But I mean, most of it is, and Tom Brady talks about it all the time. Most of it is just number one, getting your offense in the right play at the right time, and number two is the execution part. And those are the two things. And he's gotten a lot better at but again, the Eagles' offense is more simplified than some of the offense. Like I think people think about whether it's Tom Brady or even Phillip Rivers, comparing it to Nick Sirianni's past. The Eagles' offense is far more simplified than that. It's basically canning from run to pass or pass to run.
Right.
So there's limitations in that. And then once you, and I think he's gotten really good at getting to the right play from that perspective, which is basically a math equation. All right, here's the extra defender. This is what I'm going to run. So there's some natural limitations that they haven't gotten. And I don't know if they can. Now, history tells me that he's done it before, so he'll do it again. And I'm talking about Nick and with Phillip Rivers. He's done it before, so he can do it again. So I don't believe this is completely shut down. But then the second part is the execution part, and that's the processing part. And that just gets better with experience and comfort and chemistry. He should have all the chemistry he needs with AJ and Devontae and Dallas, and he does. So, a lot of it is ball's got to come out, got to trust it. And that's where I think the Eagles coaching staff has harmed Jalen Hurts a little bit by hyper focusing on ball security so much. It's such a give and take.
Right. I mean, you see a tight window and he's not throwing it because he's so worried about turning the ball over.
Exactly. It's such a give and take. That's why it's so hard. It's like, when do you push it? When do you not push it? And all this stuff happens in a millisecond. And more often than not, he's going to err on the side of caution and not put the football. And when you miss that window in the NFL, then it becomes off schedule and things, which the Eagles are one of the best 2 or 3 teams in football with off schedule stuff. So it's not exactly the worst thing for them. For other teams, it's really bad if you don't have an off schedule type quarterback, but for them, it's not that bad, but it does limit your passing efficiency by doing it that way.
We're gonna see what happens with this offense. I do think they got to get better, and I think the fair, part of it is that you have so much talent. It's not just like you're talking about a regular offense here. We're talking about an offense that's loaded with weapons. So it is fair to expect it to be a little bit better than it has been. But at the same time, John, I mean, it's worked. It's worth 2-0. They're 4-0 in games that they don't throw 100 yards. And they were 18-1 in their last 19. They're 16-0 in games that Jalen Hurts starts and finishes. I mean, it almost is like, shit, all the concerns we come up with, do any of them even fucking matter? I don't know.
Well, football's, you said it again yesterday. There's a lot of cliches in the book of Nick Sirianni, but one of the biggest is ultimate team game. There's more people fighting for a win than the quarterback. And the Eagles have found every avenue to every win. Well, earlier in the show, I'm talking about the punter and how effective he is. Like, you can win an NFL game a million ways.
Right.
And the Eagles can win every way possible. Every way possible. They can win on defense. They can win on offense. They can win with the running game. They can win on the passing game. They can win on special teams. That's why they're great. One thing's not clicking. The other thing picks it up.
Why did they go so far away from what Shane Steichen did?
They haven't gone so far away from what Shane Steichen did.
Now,
Now,
I feel like it was mostly RPO based.
Part of it is the running back. I mean, part of it is that look, they had to incorporate more passing when they had Miles Sanders and DeAndre,
right,
who are good players, but they're not great players.
It's funny you brought that up. Good.
Now they have a great player. So it skews even more towards, they were always run heavy, even with Miles and
I don't ever remember though the passing being this much. I mean, and maybe you brought it up. Maybe Saquon, while he's added such a big element to the offense, has he made their passing game regress in a way? I mean,
oh,
AJ
God,
Brown,
God, yes. God, yes. The answer to that is God, yes. Same thing I was talking about Joe Burrow with the Koopa. Well, you have Joe Burrow, but you can't drop back 70% of the time. It's like, what are we talking about here?
Right.
You get a great player, you utilize a great player. Again, I don't think people understand what a Herculean effort it is to make a Super Bowl with the Cincinnati Bengals as an organization, and to make 2 consecutive AFC championship games. That dude is a superstar. It's what Saquon Barkley is at the running back position. He is a superstar. But when you utilize somebody, and I went through this personally covering the team with Adrian Peterson, when you utilize somebody that much, it affects your passing game. Just from a volume standpoint, and people say, well, it just makes the passing game better. Not always.
Well, is one of the reasons that Saquon is struggling right now because of the passing game as well hasn't picked up? I mean, it's hard to run successfully when you're
well, Dallas played a lot of heavy boxes. Kansas City certainly played a lot of heavy boxes, maybe, to blitz, to stop the run on the way to the quarterback. But so, I mean, that's always going to affect, and the whole goal, all right, if you're playing cover 2 or quarters, run the football. If you're playing, again, it's a math equation. If the extra defender's in the box,
Right.
throw it. If he's not, run it. Sometimes it's just as simple as that. And they've been getting heavier boxes, I would say, a little bit through the first 2 games, but I think some of that is just due to circumstance, and I haven't been able to take advantage of that in the passing game. But different mindsets. Like Dallas played a lot of zone and was just bracketing AJ, and Steve was just blitzing from the buses, and the ball's not coming out. So different. It's a very contextual game.
Yeah, no, it is.
And that's what I think. Like and none of that will carry over to the Rams. None of it. Got to see how the Rams are playing. And that's what I think is hard for people to decipher at times, because there's a lot of times, like when we had the stat discussion yesterday, I believe. And you have these big stat games and you're like, well, they did it here. Why can't they do it here? Well, one's probably a shitty defense and one's probably a good defense. And, it becomes harder when you play good opponents. In general, you're not going to have as good as numbers as when you play bad opponents. It doesn't translate from week to week, usually. Now, if you get good at something, and the Eagles are very hyper-focused on themselves, and they should be, because their mentality is, we're better than you, and we're going to do what we want to do. That's their mentality. And I agree with that to a certain extent. Take it, they're very confident in themselves. So they don't spend a lot of time. There's exceptions. I always bring them up. Miles is an exception. Mike is an exception. Aaron Donald was an exception back in the day, where they do a lot of game planning for specific opponents. Most of the time they don't. It's like, this is where we think we can take advantage because of their weaknesses and our strengths. And that's how they approach it, because they're so gifted, they're so talented. But I think the passing game deficient. If you force me to boil it down to the most crux, I think they have taken the ball security part of it too far, and
it's almost paralyzed Hurts's decision making.
Well, I think it's made him very cautious.
Yeah, but you talk about this all the time. Windows in the NFL aren't college, dude. They're milliseconds and they're barely open.
Yeah, unless you see a broken coverage. Yeah, but
unless you have broken coverage.
But if you're trying, and one of the things, like if you're being completely honest, and there are very few quarterbacks, so please don't jump on your sword. There's no need to jump on your sword. There are very few quarterbacks who are anticipatory throwers. Like in the old days, you had all these timing routes, and you'll see the ball coming out before the guy's even out of his break. And every once in a while, they'll show it today. There's guys who can still do it today, but they're getting fewer and fewer. And they're throwing, the ball is out, and they're throwing it before the receiver even hits his break. It might be an out pattern. And they put the spot, and they throw it to a spot, and it's the receiver's job to be at that spot. And when it works, it looks awesome. There's not a lot of that in the modern NFL, and it's getting less and less. You'll see some of that with Stafford. You see some of it with more of the old school quarterbacks. Joe can do it, as I mentioned. He's not old school, but if you think about Kirk Cousins, if you think about Jared Goff, does it all the time.
Yeah, Jared Goff's great at it. Yep.
Darnold's good at it. I'm going down the list. There aren't a lot of guys who are good at it. Justin's okay. Justin Herbert. I wouldn't say great. Patrick is not good at it. It's a different game. So you're not going to see a lot of that.
You got way more playmakers at the position.
Yeah.
Off script playmakers.
Yeah. Ton more. Dak's pretty good at it at times. Jordan can do it. Okay, Jordan Love occasionally, but he's too inconsistent. It's depressing, actually. It really is. But there's a give and take, because that's a good way to phrase it. There's many more playmakers. Like they can just create something out of nothing. And the Eagles are in that category. And that's the Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, etc. And even lesser, if you want to go, there's a ton of guys who are not at that level yet, but can make plays with their feet. And then
am I wrong for wishing that we had more play actions and bootlegs and stuff like that to get Jalen out of the pocket and out kind of outside of, make plays from outside the pocket, look downfield still. I feel like we had more of that in 22. You said the offenses were similar. I know they're similar, but it did feel like we saw a lot more of that in 22 compared to now. Like it almost feels like now it's like the play breaks down and Jalen runs and picks up a first down because he's damn good at it. He throws a go ball. Or he sits in the pocket like a sitting duck and doesn't really know. You know what I mean? Like you have a mobile quarterback, a guy who makes plays outside the pocket. Why not run some bootlegs? You have Saquon Barkley. He doesn't like play action, so we can't do that at all. I don't know why I don't buy that.
Well, to run a traditional boot, you have to be under center. It has to be traditional play action. Right. And most young quarterbacks, most modern quarterbacks, I wouldn't, because he's not young anymore, but he's young, but you know what I mean? He's a veteran.
Yeah, veteran for sure.
Most are not comfortable playing that way because they don't grow up playing that way. It's pretty simple. So most coaches, most smart are building around the strengths of their quarterbacks, and most aren't comfortable playing the position that way. And the last thing they want to do is turn their back and to that's another part of it. Defenses have gotten so aggressive because it's come to the whole, so much of NFL defensive football is get to the quarterback or you're screwed. And that means a lot of blitzing, a lot of impact on edge rushers, a lot of guys who are going to kill you and so a lot of quarterbacks aren't comfortable turning their back to the defense. There's very few traditional play action guys anymore. The Eagles play action comes off those little zone read looks. You do the and you pull it and
it's almost like an RPO, but it's not really an RPO.
Yeah. Chip would tell that. Because an RPO is different than a zone read technically, but it has the same mechanics as far as the defensive look. To the defenders, it looks the same. So I used to have that argument with Chip Kelly. It's like, all right, dude, I know what you're saying. It's different, but it's the same mechanics for the defense. So, a lot that was back in the Sam Bradford days of who didn't have the ability to run the football. So nobody's buying an RPO with Sam Bradford. But so
I think they buy it with Jalen Hurts.
No, definitely. But anyway, I'm just getting into the nitty gritty of the mechanics of the look. So that's their play action now. When you hear the Eagles, like very rarely do you see the Eagles under center, like a traditional play action and he turns his back to the defense and fakes the hand up. Very rarely are you going to see that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I do wish they kind of used the RPO a little more. I know that it's kind of not something that's largely sustainable, but I think Jalen was a great decision maker when he had that decision at the line of scrimmage every play.
Well, I think the league as a whole is that, and that's how things evolved. Like that was very difficult for defenses for a long time. I still remember the Colin Kaepernick game against Clay Matthews and the Packers in the playoff game where he set the NFL rushing record playoffs wise. And Clay Matthews looked like he didn't know what was going on. He was just completely fooled. And then at some point, defenses said, you know what? Hit that fucker. I'll give up the yardage.
Right.
And when they started hitting quarterbacks, it's like, how much do you want to put your quarterback in harm's way? So once they made that shift, that's when the shift to less RPOs came. People still run it, but if everybody's got that mentality of like, you tell that edge guy, hit the quarterback no matter what, that shifted thinking a lot.
Yeah.
Just a lot of guys started doing that.
Yeah, I guess that makes more sense. I'm just kind of wishing it just because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like we don't do Jalen entirely the right service when it comes. We expect his better passing game. We have the weapons to get him the better passing game, but sometimes I don't feel like we put him in the right position for his skill set as a quarterback to throw the ball successfully. I mean, he threw for almost 4,000 yards in 22. I mean, I think he had 2,900 last year, and you talked about it. He's on pace for 21. That's only 2 games. I mean, we'll see.
Well, trust me, and this is the give and take. Like, you don't want to lose Saquon Barkley, right? But if you do
would
lose,
the better passing game make Saquon better?
In theory, but look, here's what I'm going to guarantee: if Saquon Barkley gets hurt, Jalen Hurts' numbers are getting better. But you don't want that. So, right. I mean, it's kind of like it's not kind of like, it's a give and take. I mean, they have decided this is our best way to win, and they were right. To their credit, they were right. They won the whole damn thing. So that's the reason why. And, Jalen Hurts talked about that a lot. I think people forget during the season when these questions would come up, and he said, sometimes you have to, you have to service others and things like that. And sometimes you have to accept a lesser role. And right now he's in a position where he's accepting a lesser role. To your point, when he was second in the MVP voting, and rightfully so, he had a larger role. Bottom line. Now, that people say, what do you mean? He's the quarterback. He's the quarterback. There was more on his shoulders to create offense.
I feel like they got to find a little bit of a better balance this year. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they go and they just win it this way. And
they threw. I think he had 152 passing yards in the first game. What do you have in the second game?
101, but I think 94 net with the sack.
Yeah, it was just over 100, and they're 2-0. I don't know. Should they be able to win this way? Probably not, but they do. I mean, it's hard to argue until the loss comes up. Then have at it. I think that opens the floodgates.
Yeah, right.
Like if they lose to the Rams, and I'm talking about, it doesn't even have to be like 38-17. If they lose 24-23, and Jalen throws for 150 yards, the floodgates will open. They will open.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a bad thing to have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and have somewhat of a desire to get them more involved. I don't think, like, some people are like, you're a hater, you're this. And I'm like, what?
No, they always
A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Why the fuck would we not want them involved in our offense? That makes no sense to me, but whatever. Let's get to some super chats to close out the show today. Great one today, everybody. Good conversations. Ed Kratz was excellent. As always, love talking to Eddie K. Here on Birds 365. Matt NJ, what's up, Matt? If the opponent's defense is heavily committing to stopping Saquon, why is it so difficult to get guys like AJ open and build explosives off of all the house blitzes?
Well, they got their only explosive of the game off a blitz, off a zero blitz, and and they did it in the Super Bowl. But they're not good at sight adjustments, and it's basically just go routes. So it's basically just the 50-50 ball, and they should throw it more. The 50-50 ball. So my short answer to that would be they've never been great at sight adjustments, and they continue to not be great. So when you're talking about their reaction to the blitz, it's basically go route or bust at this point. Occasionally you get a slant, but not often. Um, and you can blame whoever you want for that, but there's been one constant. So
Matt, thank you, brother. Appreciate $10 super chat. John checking in. What's up, John? $5 super chat. He says, I see the 23 offense again. The run is being stopped early, and I don't see anything that they can fall back on like last season offensively. It's week 4, offensively, week 4.
well, I think I think the 2023 offense would be, from a passing perspective, significantly better than the 2024 offense. So
I think John brings up an interesting point, though, John, last year, in that last year we had a bad first 4 weeks and we defaulted to this kind of, and it worked.
yeah.
This year we're like starting at this and it doesn't look so great yet. Now, maybe it just picks up after week 4 or eventually starts to pick up, but where do you default to from here, which is an interesting way to look at it, I think is
well, they're not defaulting to anything until they lose a game. Remember, they lost 2 games last year when they scaled it back. They haven't lost a game. So if they continue to win, nothing's changing. Other than trying to get better in what they're doing, in what you've seen, which is, on a bunch of underneath stuff. They'll try to get AJ and Devontae involved as they did last week. But from a mindset standpoint, it's not going to change until you lose games. That's the only thing that's going to cause it to change. I mean, their whole formula is the turnover thing. That's all it's about.
Yeah.
So they've gotten very conservative, and it's worked. 38-9. 38 takeaways, 9 giveaways.
Yeah, it's great. I think it's 39-8, actually.
Oh, 39-8, whatever.
Same thing. I mean, shit.
In the ballpark. So, I mean, it's not going to change until the only thing that spurs change in this league is losing football games. You're not changing when you win.
Yeah, no doubt.
And they have yet to throw an interception. I mean,
no touchdowns, no interceptions.
Yeah. So
they don't even need to throw touchdowns anymore. This team is like defying modern. This team is like defying.
They've already defied modern.
Yeah, they're going to further
but
with
it. That also, and I always bring it up when people get upset at certain lists that say certain quarterbacks are better. Like the rest of the league doesn't play the way the Eagles play. To me, it's the easiest explanation ever. Yeah, so when you talk to other executives and other GMs and other coaches and things like that and other scouts, they're like, well, we can't play this way. So we would rather have insert name.
Here's Jason 18. Last one of the day. We're a little overtime here. J-Mac, thoughts on Steichen, Indiana Jones, and the Colts so far? One of my sleeper teams along with Gannon and the Cards. Interesting division. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I think Shane, a lot of times, man, and I'm sure Shane is happy, he's got a quarterback he wants to work with, and whereas, look, coaches, let's be honest. They have nothing to do with off schedule stuff. You're not drawing up, hey, let's run an off schedule play. They want a quarterback to run their off. I think Shane is living his dream, and I'm happy for him. I love that dude. And he's elevating Daniel Jones, who's playing really good football. It's very early.
You think he has a chance to be this year's Darnold?
I already said it. I think he's going to be this year's Darnold. They've been very effective. I mean, they're not even, I don't think they punted the ball in 2 games. Everything is clicking. Again, Daniel's not as talented as Sam Darnold, but he's a smart guy. And if you put him in good positions, he can do some things. And I think Shane's enjoying himself. And I'm happy for him. Get the build in offense, and you're seeing it at least early. And we'll see if they can sustain it. They're not going 17-0, but I think they got a chance in what's a poor division. In Houston, watching them last night, they've done nothing with their offensive line. It's a disaster. So they're going to have a chance to win that division.
Yeah, no doubt. Johnny Mac, great show today, brother. What's on the Eagles' agenda? They're off today, right? Off today?
Coordinator day.
Oh, get down there. Ed said that, yeah. So, all right, brother. Appreciate you doing it today. We'll talk to you tomorrow, man.
All right. See y'all.